You say his name 5 times.
In cities everywhere,
Candyman.
they whisper his name.
Right. Candyman.
It's just a story.
Candyman.
Candyman.
Just a ghost story.
Candyman.
Who is that?
I came for you.
Do I know you?
Now she is about to discover
Telling? Get out! Get out!
what's behind the mystery.
I'm sick.
What's behind the legend.
Listen, he's under the bed!
And most terrifying of all,
Come with me.
what's behind the mirror.
He's here.
Candyman. You don't have to believe. Just beware.
Hey there, bees, grad students, murderous souls, and Tony Todd. He gets his own shout out.
Welcome to another episode of What Happens in the Crypt.
Today, we are talking about the 1992 Bernard Rose film, Candyman. I did not actually know that this was based off of a Clive Barker story called The Forgotten.
I didn't either, but as soon as they show like the burn makeup on her, I'm like, oh, this has Hellraiser written all over it, even though he had nothing to do with like this movie per se. It has the same vibe.
Well, no, he does, kind of. He co-wrote the script, or something with the script. He worked on the script.
Yeah, but I mean, like, he didn't direct it or have any, I don't know. Just that makeup part is gross and reminds me of it. That's all.
The makeup artist actually also worked on Hellraiser.
Yeah.
We'll get there. A brief synopsis of the film. The Candyman, a murderous soul with a hook for a hand, is accidentally summoned to reality by a skeptic grad student researching the monster's myth.
Trigger warnings for this movie include violence, gore, and there's also a dog death on screen, as well as use of syringes. And this whole movie does take place like in a very poor apartment building, so I don't know, like hoarding, dirt, that type of stuff is very much in this movie.
The tagline of this movie that's also front and center on the DVD cover, "We dare you to say his name 5 times."
Another tagline that I just thought was really funny was, "You don't have to believe, just beware."
There's an interview with the woman who actually teaches the Get Out college
The sunken
course,
place.
The sunken place.
Mm-hmm.
She even was joking. She's like, I mean, what was it? What did she say? She was like,
I won't say his name 5 times.
Yeah, why risk it?
Yeah.
This movie takes place largely in the actual Cabrini Green public housing.
Mm-hmm.
What do we want to call it? The public housing project. That's
I was
it.
going to say it's the projects.
Yes, it's a big public housing project that was built in 1942. It actually has since been torn down. It was
Since filming?
Yes, it was actually
Interesting.
fully torn down. I think it was torn down between like 1994 and like 2012 or something like that. So it's actually fairly recently that it was torn down.
Interesting.
And yeah, that's its real name. And they actually shot partly there.
Right, so the scenes that were like the outside of the 2 women walking in was actually the outside of the Cabrini Green, as well as like the stairwells and stuff.
Yeah. The movie's producers actually had to make deals with gang members and pay them to stay out of the production's way.
Yeah, this is insane to me. Like, so obviously, like, to paint the scene a little bit, when you first see Cabrini Green, it's what's the main girl's name? Helen. It's Helen and her friend, and they're getting harassed by guys outside the building who are saying that they're cops, and they're like yelling up the stairwell to other people saying like the police are here. But like, it seems like those are actors and that they're just like walking through this area. But then upon like researching this a little bit, we found out that these were actually some of them. I don't know if any of the ones that actually have lines, but the men that are lingering outside the building were actually gang members that lived in the building.
And in an interview, Tony Todd actually makes a very brief comment that not only were police present, but they actually had police snipers nearby.
Yeah.
Actually, on the last day of production, one of the production vans was actually shot. Just once, and nobody was harmed, but the van itself was shot.
Mm-hmm.
Director Bernard Rose has done many interviews and has been quoted. He talks about shooting there a lot, and this is actually a quote that he said about it. I went to Chicago on a research trip to see where it could be shot, and I was shown around by some people from the Illinois Film Commission, and they took me to Cabrini Green, and I spent some time there, and I realized that this was an incredible arena for a horror movie because it was a place of such palpable fear. And rule number 1, when you're making a horror movie, is set it somewhere frightening.
He continued on to say that there was crime there, but people were actually afraid of driving past it. And there was such an aura of fear around the place. And I had thought that was something really interesting to look into because it's sort of a kind of fear that's at the heart of modern cities, end quote.
On the note of Cabrini Green, there is, in the movie, Bernadette tells Helen she heard a kid got shot there the other day. And actually on October 13th, 1992, I think it was, that's 3 days before the movie actually was released. A boy who was a real-life resident there named Dontrell Davis was killed by a stray bullet while walking to school. The shooter was identified as local gang member Anthony Garrett, who intended to kill a rival gang member. Garrett was convicted of first-degree murder and received 100 years in prison.
It's intense.
It's very sad, but this story just kind of gives you some perspective on Cabrini Green, and kind of shocked that a movie was shot there almost.
Yeah. And one of the other things that we watched, the production designer was talking about how in those types of buildings, maybe not Cabrini Green specifically, but those types of projects, that the walls were built with such cheap materials that people would get robbed by someone just bashing a chair through the wall of the next apartment over.
Because Cabrini Green is like that, where it's just regular cinder blocks. Mm-hmm. So you could just take a hammer
and literally get into
somebody's home.
This movie, like a lot of movies that we love, strictly has practical effects, I think, for the most part, except for a few scenes with the bees, right? That were CG?
No scenes with the bees were CG. All the bees are real.
The thing I read about the bees was for that opening sequence, there obviously was not that many bees, that it was
Oh, yeah. The only...
So yeah. I guess that's editing. That's not quite CG, but that they duplicated how many bees were in that.
The only real CG in this movie that I can think of off the top of my head is at the end with some of the fire.
Yeah. Starting off, there is that very scary scene where Helen goes into that bathroom where the kid directs her to go, and on the wall, what does it say? Sweets for the sweet is written in poop on the wall. And I guess to make this, they actually used chocolate biscuits and ginger biscuits mixed with water to create a sticky brown substance. And
the designers for this and the special effects crew were Bob Keane, Mark Coulier, and Gary Tunnicliffe. And they said that the chocolate made a darker color and the ginger made a lighter color.
Yeah.
So for different variations.
Yeah, it's gross. It does look like poop.
It is very gross.
Yeah. That scene is really scary too.
Yeah.
Just in general.
Yeah, that entire time I'm sitting there why are you in there alone? Why are you... Don't get out.
Yeah.
Just leave.
Ugh. Because even that scene as well, when the guy hits her in the head with the hook, when the blood sprays, it's oh my God. It, it hurts my heart and my head.
The most famous prop for this movie, I would say, is probably the hook. Originally, the hook was actually supposed to be closer to his elbow, so it was supposed to be much longer. More of his arm was supposed to be cut off, but they kept running into problems where the hook would either be too long or his real arm was too long to do it.
Because Tony Todd is 6'5", so a hook the length of his forearm is very, very, very long.
Yeah, it's long, heavy, would get in the way of other props in the set, so they had to make it just his hand.
Initially, they actually reached out to a blacksmith to create the hook once they were set on the design. And the guy was like, cool, what is this for? And they told him a horror movie. And he was like, great, I'll make it in 3 days. So they went to go pick up the hook. And I guess he started questioning them about what horror movie they were doing. And when they said it was a Clive Barker movie, he refused to give them the hook. I guess he was a very religious man, and Hellraiser was very popular. And that was obviously the Clive Barker thing that was out in the open at that point in time. And so he made the hook and then wouldn't give it to them.
He called them Satan spawn.
Yeah. Wow.
And made them leave.
I just can't imagine like how much money they probably were paying for this custom blacksmithed hook. And that this dude said no.
And they actually
so
don't
weird.
know. Yeah, they don't know what happened to that hook.
Yeah. He probably still has it.
He probably had it like blessed and buried or some shit.
Blessed and buried. So after scrapping that, they ended up making about a dozen different hooks out of different materials and different things for different scenes. So obviously, there are parts where Tony Todd's character like stabs people with the hook, but we also see him like moving things with it. So there were silicone ones, actual metal ones, etc.
Yeah, metal ones for a lot of the getting
banging,
the sound effects
yeah.
and the banging. And actually, Tuna Cliff said he had to make it himself just with like random metal they had, and he had to just do it with a hammer.
Right.
And that would be like cold forging is what it's called, because he didn't have like the supplies or a forge. Imagine having to take a stick of metal and banging it with a hammer until it was a hook.
Sounds horrible.
It would take you so long.
Mm-hmm. One of the other really amazing practical effects in this is the actual rib cage.
I'd say this is the most like famous shot from the movie.
So the actual chest was made out of foam latex and the ribs were plastic. So when Tony Todd reveals this like chest cavity that's full of bees, there actually were lungs that inflated and deflated behind.
Yeah, you don't see them,
but
sadly.
you don't see them. And it sounds like they didn't actually have them activated in the end.
No.
Because of the bees.
Yeah.
So one of the things that triggers bees to sting is if they feel trapped. So they were getting stuck behind like the latex or the plastic. And then the lung thing was inflating and deflating, which was triggering them to want to sting. So they had this whole very cool thing set up that they ended up not being able to use.
It still looked good though. I mean, I know they definitely wanted to do the lungs thing, which would have been such a cool shot.
There's also so much going on.
There's so many bees,
and it's
such
you
an
wouldn't
intense
notice
scene.
it. I don't think. I get it. But yeah, I think especially like like Tales from the Hood, where they also did like a very detailed like chest cavity thing where it was like the meth pipe or whatever it was.
It was the crack
a
pipe.
crack pipe. Like same thing where it's just like there's so much else going on, you don't really see it. So whatever. Still cool to know that they had put that much work into it.
In that same scene, Tony Todd's mouth is full of real bees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all the bees were real.
To prevent them from literally running and flying down his throat, he had to wear a dental plate thing. What's that what word we're going to use? Yeah, dental plate.
Yeah. It sounds like it was just like a silicone mold of his mouth that he wore in his mouth. Like kind of like what's it called? Like in hockey, a cup? That's not a cup.
A cup? Yes.
It's not for your mouth.
Yeah. He put a cup on his mouth.
Like a mouth guard type deal, but it like went further back and it was silicone.
It was like a mouth guard. A mouth guard, but imagine, because a mouth guard is for a top and it can also be made for the bottom. But imagine a mouth guard that's filled in, so there's no gap.
Yeah.
Which would have been very hard to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess he was just breathing out of his nose.
Right.
But it was it was basically almost like a human cork. So that it's a way to...
Yeah,
because
that makes sense.
He had, dozens of bees in his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And then, in the actual interview, what was the thing he said?
About the bee getting behind it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really gross. So not only does he have this tight, awkward thing in his mouth, it sounds like he had a line to deliver in this scene, and one of the bees got behind it. And so he said he could feel it like crawling down his throat, but he stayed in character until they cut the scene. But that just sounds like that sensation sounds even worse than just like, I mean, a bee in your mouth is going to be gross, but a bee in your mouth that's behind a plastic thing in your mouth to stop it from getting in there just is like an extra layer of wrong.
I don't want to feel something crawl down my throat. That's like a fear.
Yeah.
It's like a nightmare.
And like he couldn't like even grab it or try to, because the thing.
All of the makeup artists on this movie and special effects artists said this was the most memorable film that they've ever done.
It is very gory. Like, there's a lot going on.
There's
like,
a lot of cool effects.
Like, we are just talking about kind of some of the main different things, but there is a ton of blood in this movie.
Well,
like,
yeah, Candyman actually kills quite a few people in this movie. And anytime he, like, stabs people, they just explode with blood. And they actually said director Bernard Rose, that's his name. I'm sorry. They would say director Bernard Rose would grab like spray blood and he would add more blood to every scene.
I think the quote that Virginia had in that documentary we watched was she said he was manic about it.
Yeah.
Like he was like hilarious.
More
and
blood,
just,
blood, more.
That would be us if we made a horror movie.
Yes.
One of the other more memorable makeups in this movie is Helen at the end after the bonfire that she does die from that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because remember the movie ends with her, well, not ends,
she's a ghost in the end.
One of the last things to happen is her funeral where there's like a few people there but not too many, and then all the people of Cabrini Green
Yes.
and
I forgot about the funeral.
They drop the hook on her grave.
Yes.
And then she's the ghost like Candyman, and that's how she has the hook at the end. Such a good movie.
It is a very good movie.
we were just talking that, man, we should watch it again. And actually, we're going to watch the second one.
We're going to watch the second one tonight.
Fun fact about this movie that we didn't know, there's 2 sequels.
Yeah. I did know that there was at least a sequel, but there's just 2. And they're both on Amazon Prime, so...
Watch them.
Yep, we'll be watching them. Anyways.
Also, go to our Instagram and our Twitter and look at... Christy got me a figure of Candyman, and it's great.
I'm really good at birthdays.
She's very good at birthdays. And it's definitely a figure that I'll like never take out of the packaging just because. So the figure is Candyman with hook and all. And when it was printed, the entire back labeling is all bees.
Yeah,
so
it's actually pretty cool. However, a little bummed that one of Tony's shoes fell off in the package, so he's got a naked little barefoot.
A little barefoot. I don't know. Maybe we can turn it in, like, I've been thinking maybe we can open it and make like a display stand, but keep the back of the car. I don't know.
We'll just leave it in there for now.
It's great. Go look at it. Instagram and Twitter at What Happens in the Crypt.
Helen's burn makeup took them about 5.5 hours to apply. And she said that it was grueling to get the makeup put on, but getting it off was where it was actually painful because they actually had to, like, a lot of it is obviously directly affixed to her skin. And in an interview, she mentioned that she now has a new appreciation for horror actors that go through this type of thing all the time because she's never had to do a makeup application like this before or after. It was hilarious, though. She also mentioned that the days that the single day or the day or two that she had to wear this burn makeup was pizza day on set, and that no one would sit with her because it was too gross. And it is really gross makeup.
Yeah, it is actually very gross.
It's very realistic, I think.
Yeah, she said they would have to scrape off some of the makeup and appliances on her. And she said her skin actually felt like it was on fire for 2 or 3 days after.
Yeah, that sounds horrible.
Yep. But film is forever. Pain is temporary. Always remember.
One of my other favorite scenes and effects in this movie is where Candyman murders that doctor. And then, like, as Helen is screaming, he just crosses his chest and he zooms right the fuck out the back of that window.
Yeah, so this was definitely... When he crosses his arms, that was definitely somebody off camera cued him. So he crosses his arms, and then he was definitely on a harness with wires, probably 2 wires. And then as soon as he crosses his arms, they pull him. Yeah. And then he rockets out the back.
It's so creepy. And that one, it almost looks like it's done in reverse, even though it's not. Like,
no, it's definitely not.
But it's so fast. And like, do you think that he crossed his arms like to hide something?
No, he crossed his arms so they wouldn't hit the wall.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Because he's such like a like gothic, like mystical, like Dracula-esque type of monster, it doesn't seem weird that he does that. But I was wondering, because I feel like you can almost see the wires in that scene.
No. I don't think
I
so.
think you can. We should go back and look.
We'll go back and look.
I don't care, but I wasn't sure if that was like a stylized movement or if that was for some reason to get the shot. But I guess his wingspan is probably like 5 feet across.
Well, your wingspan is your height.
Is it?
For the most part.
So 6.5 feet across?
Yeah. Or more. But yeah. So because you'll also see like he tucks his head a little down and he brings his feet up. It's just so that he'll fit outside the window without getting hurt.
That makes sense.
But it's very jarring because it happens so fast.
Mm-hmm. Because it's like, oh my god, he just ripped this guy in half and then zoom.
Another very bloody scene. He stabs him and stabs him and stabs him and stabs him and stabs him.
Mm-hmm. Tony Todd obviously is the actor that plays Candyman.
We've only mentioned his name like 10 times already.
100,000 times. So a few things about him in this role that I thought were really interesting. For him and Virginia to get closer, because obviously for me, I find it, I'm going to rewatch this movie soon, but I found the love story aspect to be like an afterthought. Like I didn't read it as a love story horror like it's meant. I think it's just me. But I think because I'm was so distracted by the actual horror elements, I missed some of that story. But I thought it was really interesting that they had the two actors take ballroom dancing classes together so that they would, understand how to move together because all of their scenes, all of their scenes are like pretty sensual as far as like the way they interact and things like that.
Well, yeah, imagine if a complete stranger was the one floating over you with wires.
And I'm sure weird. She's little. I'm curious how tall she is.
Probably not that tall.
Yeah, so he's probably got a foot on her at least. And that they're supposed to be like comfortable in these like dream-like sequences where it's very like romantic.
Oddly enough, Tony Todd actually hung up the first time he was asked about this role. He thought it wasn't real. He didn't know what it was and he thought it was a joke or something. Mm-hmm. And originally they were going to go with Eddie Murphy.
I cannot believe that.
Candyman.
That baffles me. Apparently, too, one of the things I read was Eddie Murphy was too short for the role because he's only 5'9". And they didn't think that he was intimidating enough. That was like the reason why they didn't go with Eddie Murphy. Because
it was also in Get Out where they were thinking about Eddie Murphy.
Yes.
But it's like, he's the guy from Welcome to America and many other comedies. Imagine Hook Hand, Candyman comes out and...
That goofy smile.
The goofy smile.
Does Eddie Murphy just have like talents that we are too dumb to understand? I don't know.
He's Donkey.
Yeah.
It was actually a collaboration between Tony Todd and the creators of Candyman to give him the Renaissance look that he has.
And I liked too that in a lot of different interviews and things, Tony Todd refers to this as his Phantom of the Opera movie.
Yeah.
Which I really like that too. I like that kind of perspective. I definitely think this is one of the movies that like we watched and then within researching it, I have a way different like perspective of it, which is why I really want to watch it again. Like knowing what I know now.
Yeah, because this is a horror movie, but it's also a romance love movie because that's his only crime. His only crime was falling in love.
That's true, though.
I know it is.
And then he became a vengeful monster.
Exactly.
They deserve it.
Yes, because that's why if you've seen this movie, he's killed because he falls in love with a white woman. So they kill him, and that's the site. Cabrini Green was built over like the top of said site where he died.
Right. One of the other things that I thought was interesting was that whole very dreamy scene where they're actually like on a turntable of some sort. Turntable, I guess, is not the right word. Is it?
I mean, it works. They're standing.
They're on
spinning.
A thing that
it's
spins. And Tony Todd said that scene was actually supposed to be a few minutes longer.
They said like 2 minutes.
Yeah, and it involved like her confessing her love for him and that she was like the his lost love, and that there's a kiss, but all of that got cut because I guess that was too like risque for this movie. Was that kiss?
I wish it was in there.
Me too. That's what I mean. Like I feel like the romantic aspects are there, but didn't know how strongly I should have seen them until reading up on it.
The whole "it's always been you, Helen" thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got it. For this movie, Tony Todd actually worked personally with a beekeeper. He jokes that the bees had a bigger trailer.
Yeah.
And it was right next to his.
They probably did. They need like certain things.
Yeah, they definitely did. But he also joked he didn't mind because they worked more than him, harder than him.
Yeah.
He went on to talk about I don't know, I guess he looks fondly on it now, but he was probably pissed at the time. But on one of the first days, the beekeeper actually pushed him into the trailer and locked the door.
Yeah.
Saying this is the only way you're going to get over it.
Face your fears.
Face your fears. But it actually kind of makes sense because the beekeeper was telling him you have to give them a personality. You know, you got to get close to them. Look at that one's Joe and that one's Mark.
You can't be as afraid if you're like, that's just little Philip.
That's little Philip the bee.
And over the course of the 3 films, Tony Todd only got 26 bee stings, which seems amazing.
Yeah, I would have
so
guessed
few.
I was going to guess way more. I mean, any bee sting sucks, but he literally has hundreds of bees on him. At the end of his interview, Tony Todd says had a line that I just loved a lot when he says, "If Candyman was in the first 3 lines of my obituary, I'd be okay with that."
Yeah. He's definitely proud of this role, which is really cool.
He is such an iconic character, and of all the great characters that genre has given us, he's one that seems to speak to people who aren't necessarily even normally huge fans of the genre.
Yeah, well, it's a good film, first of all. It's we have the music of Philip Glass. We have the cinematography of Tony Richmond, who did The Man Fell to Earth. We got Bernard Rose. You got Virginia Madsen, who's an incredible leading lady. It's just... It's iconic because it captures that particular side of Chicago before the fall of Cabrini Green. Cabrini Green is no longer standing. So, it's a personal hieroglyphic that's left an imprint in the minds of people that I'm proud of. But yes, the conversation always returns to Candyman. I'm proud of him. Do I want that to be the only thing that people remember? Not at all. It's part of a package. And, and he's been good to me. But he's not the only thing that I am. In some quarters, horror has a stigmatized, opinion that is somewhat of a bastard child. So they should know that it's actually classier than most, that he's not a slasher. There's no teenagers in the woods. It's thought-provoking. And maybe they'll come away with a deeper understanding of this particular man in that particular situation and why he's after what he's after. Why he's trying to reclaim his dignity.
Virginia Madsen is the actress that plays Helen, and she actually only got this role because Rose's wife, who was intended to play the lead, got pregnant right before filming. So they ended up having her be the lead.
Yeah, originally she was supposed to be just like friend character. Mm-hmm. For the role, they mentioned that she gained a couple pounds. Which is wild. She's so small.
She's very small. That was what she said. She said they wanted me to be rounder, so I ate more pizza. It's just weird.
I would love for somebody to say that to me.
But as far as preparation for the role, she had to prove to the director that she was actually allergic to bees. Because he thought that she was
afraid
or just didn't want to do it. And so she had to get a bunch of allergy tests done so that she could confirm that she actually was allergic.
They actually did like venom tests on her.
Yeah.
And yep, she was allergic to bees.
Mm-hmm. So all of the scenes where there are bees on her, and it might be the ones with Tony Todd, the ones that are flying are like adult bees, but the ones for the scene where she's laying down and they're just on her are babies, because I guess they're not as inclined to sting. So they were like less than 10 hours old.
It's like, they're less than a day old. And it's because they're so young, they can't fly. And what was the other thing? Oh, their stingers are small,
not as
so small
big,
that they can't really sting you.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, they had paramedics constantly on.
But what was hilarious was when she described the scene. So the scene where Tony Todd like kisses her with the bees. That's really the only time she's covered in any capacity. Was like they had all of these medical staff there for her because she's allergic, but they were actually divided by a net that everybody was on the other side because they didn't want the bees to fly away. But so if she really did have something happen, it wouldn't be very quick for them to get to her.
It would take them a couple seconds to get there.
Yeah, which is a little intimidating.
Madsen is quoted as saying as, "The first thing you notice about Tony Todd is that he is quite beautiful."
Yeah, she likes him.
I think she has a crush on him.
That was so evident, like, in this interview we watched with her. She makes that comment about him being beautiful. And then she talks about the scene where he is holding her, like, restraining her in the fire. And she's like, he knew just how to hold me to not hurt me. And it's like, oh, you like him.
She also mentions that he's tall, handsome, and gentle.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he is definitely a beautiful, gentle giant.
Yes.
She's correct.
I have a crush on Tony
Yeah,
Todd.
it was just hilarious the way she talked about him. One of the weirder things about this movie, and honestly something I have never heard before.
I was going to say weirder. This is some shit I have never heard.
This is insane to me. So before they started filming, the director, Rose, took Virginia to a hypnotist. And she said it worked. Like, the hypnotist was able to have her, like, move her arms, and she wasn't, aware that she was doing it. And so when they left this hypnotism session, he was given, like, a trigger word.
The director was.
Yes, Rose was given a trigger word to put her into this trance. So she said that the scenes where she's with Tony Todd and her eyes are, like, dilated.
Big and dreamy.
And she looks, like, hypnotized, that the director was actually using a trigger word on her to put her into this state. And it was like the interview where she talks about it. She's like, yeah, it was weird. I'll never do that again. And she's
actually kind of calm about it.
She probably has PTSD.
It's very strange. I've never heard of that.
I've never heard of that. And like, what a serious abuse of power within like a film set. There is no reason. Well, she was young and she did agree to it, but that's such a weirdly gross abuse of power, in my opinion. Like, that he had like some sort of mental control over her. It doesn't sound like anything happened. It's icky. It's icky. And she said that, like, she can tell when she watches the scenes where he had given her the trigger words because she can read it on her own face. She said she
doesn't even recognize her own face.
Yeah. She said they would add more makeup in between to make her eyes look bigger, like more mascara, but then also he was giving her these triggers. Oh, it's so weird.
She did also go on to say that she's very proud to have been in this movie. Mm-hmm. She also said it's the one she gets recognized the most for.
Yeah, I honestly don't know her from anything else. She looks a lot like Scully, though.
She does look like Scully.
That's what I always think. One of the more memorable scenes is that scene where Helen is in the bathroom and the hook comes through the medicine cabinet and she screams and she runs out of the room and takes off. And when she goes into the hallway, Candyman's there. So I guess when they filmed this, they wanted to get an actual, like, fear reaction from her. And so this scene was, like, I'm not sure how much of a surprise, probably, like, timing more than anything.
She just didn't know when it was going to happen.
Yeah. So her reaction is completely honest. And she said that when this scene happened, she was so scared that she, like, ran off the set.
She ran into the parking lot.
What was hilarious, though, too, was it was actually Tony Todd who controlled the hook in that scene, and that it took a ton of convincing because he didn't want to scare her, and then he felt horrible afterwards.
What a gentleman.
Another interesting thing about the medicine cabinet aspect. So obviously, in the Candyman legend, that's how he got into the one apartment and murdered the woman in the beginning of the story. And then we also see that in Helen's apartment, it's the same thing where she can push the back of her medicine cabinet and get into her neighboring apartment. But actually, this was based off of a string of actual murders that took place in Chicago, where people were doing this and breaking apartment to apartment by going through the medicine cabinet. Philip Glass is the composer who did the music for Candyman. But what he thought was going to be an artful version of Clive Barker's story ended up being a slasher, and he was apparently really disappointed and felt like he had been manipulated into creating the score for the movie. But I thought this was hilarious that he was quoted as saying, It has become a classic, so I still make money from that score. Get checks every year.
It's a great... I mean, he did a great job.
He just cares in the end that he's getting paid for it, so...
It's a great... the song is stuck in my head right now.
Yeah.
Here, play it again. It's so good.
It is very good. It's just funny that he thought it was going to be like this like arty, like very cool type of movie, and it's just a slasher.
It's not just a slasher. He just doesn't get it.
Yeah, yes, that's fair.
He's a fool.
Mm-hmm.
Made very good music, though.
Philip Glass, you are a fool.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to spend a little time talking about like the myths behind Candyman, and you know, there's everybody knows the story of Bloody Mary and the couple in the parked car, and there's a hook on
I know this is wrong, but for some reason my brain immediately went to the hash-slinging slasher from SpongeBob.
No.
Which is also a play on the hook hand guy, but I was like, that's not the real name, that's from SpongeBob.
Mm-hmm. There's Bloody Mary, whose name you say 3 times into the mirror, and then she'll show up. And the Bloody Mary myth is based off of Queen Mary. She was the Queen of England in the 1500s, who got her nickname because she sentenced hundreds of people to death, including burning over 200 people at the stake.
Yikes.
So she was known for just killing lots of people, and the nickname has stuck ever since, for over 500 years.
Just a tiny thing that they did here that I thought was interesting. Candyman never makes any noise when he walks. Like, he doesn't have any footsteps. Like,
it makes sense.
And I guess this was intentional as far as, like, solidifying that he's kind of a myth and a legend. Like, he's there, but he's not really there.
Like a phantom.
Mm-hmm. It was just a tiny little interesting thing.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about that or notice, but it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. There are 7 on-screen deaths in this movie, including one very unfairly murdered dog.
He didn't deserve it.
He was being a good guardy boy.
Yeah. With this movie, it is not streaming anywhere for free. You can rent it at the usual places. But we definitely recommend, we got the collector's edition Blu-ray or something.
I think it was $10.
It was $10 on Amazon, and it comes with, like, 10 behind-the-scenes interviews.
And it's 2 discs as well, so it's the director's cut and the original, which we did not watch the director's cut, but we will eventually.
Yep, definitely soon. We'll probably watch that one when we watch it next.
But like we said at the top, the 2 sequels are available for streaming on Amazon Prime, like included with your Prime subscription.
Yeah. So we're definitely excited to be watching those soon. Now, as you've probably heard, this movie is getting I don't know if is it a direct remake?
I don't
or
think so.
Is it like, I think it's like the spiritual successor. I don't think it's technically a sequel.
With it being Jordan Peele, I don't think he would just do a straight up sequel or remake of it. I think it's like a reimagination. Like it's a play off of the first one, I think. I guess that's technically a remake.
It's technically a remake. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we'll say remake.
Who knows if this movie is ever actually coming out? It was supposed to come out so long ago.
Well, it wasn't going to make it, theaters were closed.
I know, I'm just saying.
So currently it is set to be released August 27th of this year, 2021. Mm-hmm. And whenever we do get to see it, we will be bringing this movie back and doing some kind of comparison, but that'll have to wait.
I wish with this one they would honestly just release it for $20 like they have with other ones, because I would pay that for this.
Yeah,
to watch at home.
We're on team, I'm not paying $20 to watch this, but I love Candyman. Yeah. So
I mean, it's like you got to put your foot down on not paying that much, or these companies will think that they can charge that much, but occasionally.
I just really want to see it, but hopefully we can talk about it later this year. Mm-hmm. But for next week, we will be talking about the 2018 Ari Aster film, Hereditary.
Very excited to do this one.
We're big fans of Ari Aster. Mm-hmm. We actually got the Blu-ray last June.
Yeah.
I got it for you for your birthday because I got her like an assortment of movies to watch because I have a projector so we can project movies in the backyard.
Hereditary would be very scary and fun to watch in the backyard.
In pitch black? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'd be fun. It definitely would be scary though. But yeah, so for some reason we just never opened it.
Yeah,
I
think we've seen it within the last year.
Yeah, it was on like Netflix.
Yeah, we just watched it. We just didn't open the Blu-ray.
Or I was like, we have the Blu-ray.
Sometimes it's all about that convenience.
I know, but we're gonna open it up because
Yes.
it actually has some cool
Right.
behind the scenes. We're excited to talk more about something witchy.
Yep.
Yep.
Be my victim. I am the writing on the wall, the whisper in the classroom. Without these things, I am nothing. So now I must shed innocent